What if the bottle sitting next to your sink right now is quietly hurting your skin every single night? What if the brand you have trusted since childhood is legally required to warn you about it in print on its own label? Before we go any further, do something small for me. Tap that like button right now, not for me, but for every family scrubbing dishes with a bottle they have never once turned around to read. Hit subscribe too, because by the end of this video, you are going to want to know which everyday product gets pulled apart next. Here is the strange thing about washing up liquid. Nobody questions it. We read food labels carefully. We check what is inside shampoo and moisturizer. And we worry about additives hiding in our snacks. But the bottle sitting by the sink, the one that touches every fork, every plate, every mug your children drink from every single day, gets a completely free pass. It looks harmless. It smells of lemon or ocean breeze. It carries a friendly, familiar name we grew up watching on television. So we never once flip it over. That is exactly the gap that these companies have been living comfortably inside for decades. Washing up liquid is one of the only products in your entire home that touches something before it goes into your mouth. Again and again, every single day, sometimes dozens of times before lunch is even finished. Yet, it gets treated like background noise, like wallpaper. Nobody stops to actually ask what is in it, because the packaging has already answered that question for them with a smiling font and a picture of fruit. Walk down any supermarket aisle and you will see the same handful of tricks repeated on bottle after bottle, brand after brand. Yellow means fresh. Green means kind to nature. A picture of a lemon means natural. The word power means it works harder than the bottle beside it. Antibacterial means it is protecting your family from invisible danger. None of these words are outright lies, but none of them are the full truth either. The full truth is always printed much smaller. On the back, in the one place most shoppers never bother reading, tucked beneath a barcode, nobody looks at twice. So tonight we are doing something refreshingly simple. We are turning the bottles around, every single one of them, and reading exactly what the manufacturers themselves have chosen to print. We picked 8 of the most popular washing up liquids currently sold across UK supermarkets, and we are showing you precisely what their own labels admit, in their own words, not ours. Then, because this channel is about giving you real answers rather than just outrage for the sake of it, we will show you 4 brands that are genuinely closer to old-fashioned soap. The kind your grandparents would actually recognize, with far less to hide once you turn them around too. Let's start with a bottle that basically lives in every British kitchen, the one that feels less like a product and more like a permanent fixture of home itself. It has been sitting beside sinks since 1960. The adverts show soft hands, a warm kitchen, a single golden drop that somehow lasts an entire week of washing up. It has been wrapped in so much nostalgia over the decades that most people have genuinely never thought to question it, the same way you never questioned the wallpaper in your childhood kitchen. Turn that familiar bottle around. You will find 2 specific preservatives listed clearly in the ingredients, the exact kind dermatologists have been warning people about for well over a decade now. Right beside them sits a printed warning line written by the manufacturer, not by us, stating plainly that the product may cause serious eye irritation and may produce an allergic reaction. Sit with that for a second. The brand whose entire 60-year identity has been built around gentleness and softness is legally obligated to admit, in its own printed words, that it can trigger an allergic reaction on your skin. The front of the bottle promises kindness. The back of the same bottle promises the exact opposite. Same product, same shelf, same warm golden lighting in every advert since your grandparents were young. And here is a piece of history worth actually knowing, because it changes how you see the whole category. What your grandparents used after the war really was soap, made from genuine fats and oils, boiled down close to the traditional recipe used for generations before them. What sits beside most kitchen sinks today is not soap at all. It is a synthetic detergent, built from a completely different chemical family entirely, dressed up in nostalgic branding so it still feels exactly like the same trusted product your family always used. It is not the same thing, not chemically, not historically. So if you have spent years quietly blaming your cracked, dry, sore fingers on simply getting older, that ingredients list might explain a great deal more than age ever could. Right next to that classic bottle sits its louder, flashier cousin, the one shouting strength across the label in bold capital letters, daring you to believe it can tear through baked-on grease like some kind of industrial degreaser built for a garage floor rather than a dinner plate. It is fundamentally doing the exact same job, lifting food residue off a plate, just dressed up in aggressive packaging and sold to you at a serious markup for the privilege. Independent consumer testing groups have found these premium-sounding bottles priced at roughly 3 to 4 times the cost per 100 milliliters, compared with the plain, basic version that's sitting right beside it on the very same shelf. Turn both bottles around, and the ingredients are strikingly similar, sometimes nearly identical. The same family of surfactants, comparable fragrance compounds, the same preservatives, raising the same concerns. What actually changed is not the formula inside. What changed is the single aggressive word printed in bold letters on the front. And your willingness to pay considerably more simply because that word sounds impressive on a supermarket shelf. Then there is an entire category built almost entirely on fear rather than genuine need, the antibacterial bottles. Every major brand seems to have one now, all promising to eliminate 99.9% of bacteria, as if your ordinary kitchen sink had suddenly become a hospital operating theater requiring surgical levels of sterilization. Consumer researchers who have tested cleaning products since the 1950s have stated plainly and repeatedly that there is genuinely no need for a special antibacterial washing up liquid, because ordinary detergent already deals with bacteria in much the same way that regular soap does on your hands every time you wash them. Even more revealing, if you actually read the small print buried on many of these bottles, the antibacterial claim frequently only applies when you apply the liquid directly and undiluted onto your sponge or cloth afterwards. That impressive headline number is often really about protecting your sponge, not about sterilizing your actual dinner plates at all. And if a clean sponge is genuinely what worries you, the real advice costs absolutely nothing extra. Rinse it thoroughly after every use, let it dry out fully between washes, and simply replace it every few weeks. No special antibacterial formula required whatsoever. Think about how strange this whole idea becomes once you slow it right down. For generations, people ate their dinner, scraped the leftover food off their plates, washed everything in hot water with ordinary detergent, rinsed it, dried it, and put it away in the cupboard. That was always more than enough. Then suddenly, the supermarket shelf started implying that unless your bottle carried a germ-killing claim printed boldly on the front, your kitchen was somehow not properly clean at all. This is not really about hygiene in any meaningful sense. It is about quietly making you feel slightly irresponsible for choosing the plain, ordinary bottle so that you reach for the more expensive one instead, purely to feel safe rather than because you actually needed it. There is also a subtler cost hiding inside that fear-based marketing, one most people never notice at all. While your attention gets pulled toward killing invisible bacteria on a plate that was already clean the moment you rinsed it, almost nobody talks about the actual dirtiest object sitting right there at the sink, the sponge itself sitting damp and warm for hours at a time, collecting old food particles and yesterday's grease, telling people to simply rinse it out properly, let it dry completely, and swap it every few weeks does not sell an expensive premium bottle, though, does it? That advice is too simple, too cheap, and frankly too old-fashioned to put on a shelf next to something promising 99.9% protection. So instead, the shelf gives you eucalyptus, ocean-fresh scent, and a laboratory-sounding claim, quietly turning one of the most basic habits in the entire house into something that feels like a premium upgrade you now cannot possibly live without. Supermarket own label bottles deserve a mention here too, because their plain, understated packaging plays its own quiet trick on your brain. A completely different trick from the branded shouting. No bold slogans, no bright colors, just a basic label that whispers honest and no frills straight at you. But plain packaging never automatically means a plain formula underneath it. Turn these humble bottles around, and you will usually find the exact same underlying structure as the big branded version sitting nearby. The same category of surfactants, similar fragrance allergens, a preservative carrying the same eye irritation warning printed in the same small font. The picture of a lemon on the front tells your brain fresh and natural instantly. What that actually represents on the ingredients list is simply a fragrance compound, along with the specific allergens that come attached to that fragrance. The fruit always lives on the front, the chemistry always lives on the back, every single time, without a single exception across the entire aisle. Now here's a small pause, because if you have made it this far, this video is clearly worth a little more of your time, and there's genuinely a lot more still coming. So do one thing for me right now. Leave a single word in the comments describing whatever bottle happens to be sitting next to your sink at this exact moment. I read every single one of them, and honestly, the answers people leave always surprise me more than you would expect. Let's talk about the trendy minimalist bottles now, the ones that look like they belong displayed in a design magazine rather than tucked under your sink. Muted pastel colors, a sleek teardrop-shaped bottle, an entire aesthetic built carefully around feeling like a small ethical company rather than a giant faceless corporation. Two things are worth genuinely knowing before you reach for one of these on your next shop. First, the ingredients list still includes synthetic fragrance along with the usual associated fragrance allergens, meaning the clean, pure, minimalist image printed on the front simply does not match the actual chemistry printed on the back. Second, and this genuinely surprises most people the first time they hear it, several of these fashionable little eco-brands were quietly bought years ago by some of the largest household chemical corporations on the entire planet, the very same companies responsible for well-known pest control sprays and household furniture polish, sitting in the very same supermarkets. That is not a claim about the formula sitting inside the bottle itself. It is simply about exactly who receives your money the moment you buy it. The packaging is carefully designed to make you feel like you have quietly opted out of big corporate manufacturing altogether. In reality, your money frequently ends up in precisely the same corporate pocket either way, just wearing a friendlier, softer-looking outfit. This next part might genuinely be the most uncomfortable section of the entire video, especially if you consider yourself someone who always instinctively reaches for the green option. Because a well-known and genuinely respected eco-certified brand, one of the very first manufacturers in Britain to earn an official European eco-label, still lists the exact same allergy-linked preservatives we flagged earlier, sitting right there on its own ingredients panel for anyone willing to look. They are declared openly and honestly, nothing is being smuggled in or hidden, and that genuinely matters and deserves credit. But it proves the exact point running quietly through this entire video from start to finish. A green leaf printed on the front and a row of award badges do not automatically mean safety. The specific ingredient your skin might react to has not magically disappeared from the formula. The certification is fundamentally about environmental impact and packaging sustainability. It was never automatically a guarantee about what actually happens to your bare hands. A remarkably similar story applies to an ethical, worker-owned British cooperative brand, one with genuinely admirable values throughout its entire supply chain, cruelty-free certification, and fully recycled packaging across the range. People buy this particular brand specifically because they care deeply about doing right by the planet. Yet its citrus-scented washing up liquid still lists a preservative from that exact same allergenic family we keep encountering, complete with a printed warning that it may produce an allergic reaction in sensitive users. This is not an attack on the company itself, and I want to be genuinely fair here. Their values are real, their mission is sincere, and their ethical record stands up to scrutiny. It simply proves, once again, that good intentions sitting in a boardroom do not automatically change what actually touches your skin standing at the kitchen sink every evening. And this brings us to what might genuinely be the single most useful lesson contained in this entire video. So please, if you take only one thing away from tonight, please let it be this one. A beloved independent British brand, one that has spent decades building its reputation on being gentle, natural, and trustworthy. Used to list 2 specific preservatives from that same allergy-prone family on its older bottles, the exact bottles many loyal customers grew up buying without a second thought. But if you check their current formula today, sold right now on shelves and online, it has genuinely changed for the better. The preservative has been swapped out for a gentler alternative entirely, and the brand has also removed harsh sulfates and parabens from the formula completely. That is a real, measurable improvement, and it absolutely deserves credit rather than criticism. But it also proves the single rule that applies to literally every bottle discussed in this entire video. The name printed proudly on the front is never a permanent guarantee of exactly what sits inside. Formulas get quietly reformulated all the time, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse, often without any fanfare or announcement at all. The only genuine way to know for certain is checking the actual bottle currently sitting in your own hand. Not the reputation the brand built up over the last 20 years, not the advert you remember fondly from childhood, and not even this video itself after enough time has passed. Turn it round every single time you shop, especially the brands you already trust completely, because those are precisely the ones people eventually stop checking altogether. So how do you actually pick a genuinely good one instead of getting fooled all over again next time you're standing in that supermarket aisle feeling slightly overwhelmed by choice? It really comes down to 2 refreshingly simple questions. First, how sensitive are your hands? Honestly, if you already deal with dryness, cracking, redness, or irritation after washing up, the single biggest change you can make is dropping fragrance from the equation entirely, since perfume compounds are responsible for the overwhelming majority of skin reactions linked to this entire product category. Second, are you genuinely willing to ignore the front of the bottle completely and go straight to the ingredients list printed on the back before it even reaches your trolley? That is honestly the entire method, start to finish. No special app required, no complicated research needed, just the simple habit of flipping the bottle over before you commit to buying it. The genuinely encouraging news is that several brands actually do pass this test with flying colors, and the honest ones tend to say so plainly right there on the front of the bottle instead of hiding behind a picture of sliced citrus fruit. And once you start looking for that honesty specifically, you will notice it is almost always signaled the same way. A short ingredients list instead of a long one. Plain, clinical wording instead of poetic marketing language. A dermatologist logo instead of a lemon. Brands with nothing to hide tend to make that very easy to see at a glance, precisely because they know their formula can survive being read properly. If your skin reacts to almost everything you try, look specifically for ranges built for sensitive skin that openly state 0 fragrance, 0 dye, and 0 enzymes right there on the label. often carrying a genuine dermatologist-tested seal or a recognized allergy approval mark from an independent body. These formulas exist precisely because manufacturers know a meaningful portion of the population simply cannot tolerate heavily scented formulas, and the genuinely good brands are proud enough of that fact to print it clearly and boldly rather than bury it in tiny defensive text somewhere near the bottom. People who have struggled for years with sore, cracked, reactive hands after every single wash often describe switching to one of these ranges as the very first time washing up finally stopped actively hurting them. Several major eco-branded ranges also now quietly offer a genuinely stripped-back version, sitting within their own wider lineup, completely free from fragrance and dye, dermatologically tested and carrying recognized allergy approval. It is a bit of a pleasant irony that the very same parent companies criticized earlier in this video for quietly owning trendy eco-brands also happen to produce honest formulas, provided you know exactly which specific line within their range to actually pick up. Supermarket-owned sensitive ranges deserve real credit here too, and they get overlooked constantly. Several major UK retailers now sell a plant-based, biodegradable, dermatologically tested version, sitting quietly within their own household range, openly labeled as zero fragrance and zero dye right there on the front. You genuinely do not need a specialist health food shop for this particular option. It usually sits on the very same shelf as everything else we have discussed tonight, at a completely reasonable price. Quietly doing the one job the flashy, expensive antibacterial bottles never actually manage properly. Cleaning your dishes thoroughly without leaving your hands sore and cracked afterwards. For anyone genuinely wanting to go the whole way back toward proper soap-based cleaning, there are smaller certified organic brands, built specifically around soap nuts and traditional plant-based cleansers rather than synthetic detergent entirely. These tend to be fragrance-free from top to bottom, often sold online through specialist retailers rather than in mainstream supermarkets. And they represent about as close as you can genuinely get in 2026 to how washing up was actually done a full century ago, long before any of this got wrapped in plastic bottles and scented artificially with synthetic citrus oils manufactured in a laboratory. Now, before we move any further, I want to properly acknowledge how much ground we have already covered together tonight, because there is still one more important stretch left, and it genuinely matters just as much as everything you have heard so far. So if you have found even a single moment of this useful, hit that like button right now while you are thinking about it, because it costs you nothing, and it genuinely helps put this exact information in front of somebody else scrolling past this video right now, who has absolutely no idea what is actually printed on their own bottle at home. If your hands are perfectly fine, and you simply want something a little more natural that still smells genuinely pleasant, there are honest choices available there too, as long as you accept the one small catch that comes attached to almost anything scented at all. Several independent brands, including that reformulated favorite discussed earlier in this video, use genuine essential oils rather than synthetic fragrance compounds, which really is a meaningful improvement over the mainstream alternative. But they still declare natural fragrance allergens clearly on the label, because essential oils inherently contain those exact compounds naturally, simply because that is how plants work chemically. That is simply the honest trade-off involved. Lovely for the vast majority of people. Just not the right pick, specifically if fragrance itself happens to be what triggers your particular skin. One more genuinely fair point before we start wrapping this entire thing up, especially for anyone watching their household budget closely right now. Because I flatly refuse to pretend the cheapest bottle on the shelf is automatically the villain of this whole story when the actual evidence simply will not let me claim that honestly. Independent consumer testing has repeatedly rated certain budget supermarket washing up liquids as genuinely excellent value for money, sometimes even outperforming premium branded versions in side-by-side testing at a small fraction of the equivalent price. If your skin is not particularly sensitive and you simply want something that shifts grease efficiently without costing you a small fortune every month, there is genuinely nothing wrong with choosing the cheapest bottle sitting on the shelf. Just apply the exact same rule we have used consistently all night long. Turn it around first, before it goes anywhere near your trolley. Some seasonal or heavily scented budget variants do carry the same preservatives and fragrance allergens as everything else discussed tonight. So check the specific variant, rather than simply assuming the entire range behaves identically across every scent. Before we close this out completely, here is something genuinely worth sitting with for a moment. Every single brand we discussed tonight, the beloved nostalgic classic, the flashy expensive premium version, the fear-driven antibacterial range. The trendy minimalist design, darling, even the certified ethical cooperative with genuinely admirable values, all of them exist comfortably inside the exact same simple pattern. Once you look closely enough, the front of the bottle sells you a feeling. Gentleness, strength, safety, virtue, simplicity, purity, The back of the same bottle, the part written under actual legal obligation rather than crafted by a marketing team, quietly tells you the truth about fragrance, preservatives, and warnings that the advert conveniently never once mentions on camera. None of this means you need to panic and throw away everything currently sitting under your sink tonight. It simply means you now get to make an informed choice instead of an emotional one that was carefully designed for you by someone else's advertising department decades ago. You do not need to pay 4 times more money for a single word like power printed boldly across a bottle. You do not need elaborate germ-killing theater for a basic job that hot water and ordinary detergent have handled perfectly well for multiple generations already. And a pretty green leaf logo stamped on the front does not excuse any brand from what is actually printed honestly on the back. If this changed even slightly how you look at the bottle sitting by your own sink right now, tap that like button one final time before you go. Because that single small tap is genuinely the easiest possible way to put this information in front of somebody else who has never once thought to check theirs. And drop a comment below telling me exactly which everyday household product you want investigated next. Because honestly, the suggestions from this community are consistently the best part of making these videos in the first place. Until next time, keep flipping the bottle around before it ever goes anywhere near your trolley. And finally, give your hands the genuine chance to stop quietly paying the price for it every single night.